Well, we're watching an amazing thing unfolding before us. It's called an election, and an unlikely candidate who has been beat up by everybody seems to be unstoppable. But Donald scored 3 more wins in the Republican primaries yesterday, and he captured the biggest prize of the day, which was Michigan.
Yes, also in Michigan, Democratic Senator Bernie Sanders won a shocking upset over frontrunner Hillary Clinton. George Thomas brings us this look at where the race stands after Tuesday's primaries.
The Trump train keeps on steamrolling ahead.
Well, thank you very much, everyone. This was an amazing evening.
The Republican frontrunner swept to victories in Michigan, Mississippi, and Hawaii, all in a week that saw his rivals and outside groups going after him with attack ads.
I don't think I've ever had so many horrible, horrible things said about me in 1 week.
As in other primaries so far, Republican voter turnout continues to be extremely high.
No matter where you go, it's records. I think it's actually the single biggest story in politics today. It's what's happening at the booth.
And what's happening at the booth is that voters are telling pollsters they are anxious about the economy, immigration, and are downright angry at the way Washington is working. In fact, on these issues, exit polls show a majority of voters want an outsider like Trump to fix the mess in the nation's capital.
I understand the people who are supporting Donald Trump. You're angry.
Meanwhile, Texas Senator Ted Cruz continues to position himself as the chief alternative to Donald Trump.
If you're fed up with the corruption of Washington, the answer is not supporting someone who has been funding and profiting off of that Washington corruption for decades.
Cruz kept Trump from winning a sweep of the Tuesday primaries with a win in Idaho, while Ohio Governor John Kasich had a strong showing in Michigan. But Cruz edged him out in a very close race for second. Florida Senator Marco Rubio, who has won only 2 contests so far and was pegged by some in the Republican establishment as the party's best alternative to Trump, had a terrible night Tuesday, placing a distant 3rd or 4th. So here's where the Republican race stands today. Trump now has 446 delegates, Cruz has 347, Rubio 151, and Kasich 54. On the Democratic side, a shocker as Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders pulled off a surprising upset victory in Michigan, despite polls showing frontrunner Hillary Clinton with a sizable lead before the vote. That gives the 74-year-old the boost he needs to fight another day.
Let's show the world that democracy is alive and well with a huge voter turnout.
But Clinton demolished Sanders with a landslide win in Mississippi, with huge help from black voters.
America belongs to all of us, not just those who are already successful. I want to be the president, not for those who are already successful. They don't need me. I want to be the president for the struggling and the striving.
As it stands now, Clinton has 1,221 delegates, Sanders 571. But the big test for Republicans comes next week in the winner-takes-all contest in Florida, Ohio, and Missouri, along with the big states of Illinois and North Carolina.
The March 15th primaries could go a long way in deciding the winner in the race for the Republican nomination. Or if Kasich wins his home state of Ohio or Rubio wins Florida, well, it could mean the Republican race will keep on going even longer. George Thomas, CBN News.
You know, Donald Trump isn't asking me for suggestions, but my suggestion would be if he's looking for somebody who can get things done, he ought to team up with John Kasich and run as a team with Kasich as vice president. If he wants to have a, quote, politician to get things done, Kasich's the man to make it happen.
Yeah, because he has said, Trump has said he wants someone who has experience.
Exactly.
Yeah,
he said it to me sitting across the table.
Well, let me ask you, what happened in Idaho? I mean, Trump didn't do too other.
They're conservative. I mean, you know, they grow a lot of potatoes in Idaho, and they've got a lot of ranchers in Idaho, and it's a beautiful state, but it's a small state. And in a small state like that, evangelicals come to the fore, and the evangelicals have gone for Cruz. So I think that's what happens. But the bottom line is, wherever there's an open primary where the Democrats can come in and vote, and they vote for Trump. And he just is sweeping the country. And, you know, I don't know what happened to Kasich. He was, not Kasich, but Rubio. He was considered the alternative, the establishment candidate, and then all of a sudden he began to say funny things in these debates, and you know, he got hammered pretty much by the governor of New Jersey. I mean, hammered, and he had a meltdown, and he's never really recovered. There's some who think he has no base and that he really ought to withdraw prior to Florida, because even if he wins Florida, which may be unlikely, so what? Where does he go? But if he loses Florida, he's withdrawn from the Senate. I don't know what is happening next. He's an extraordinarily able person, and I hate to see something like that happen.
I doubt he'll pull out before Florida, because I think he's putting all his cards on the table there.
But I tell you, the team would be Trump and Kasich, and I don't know if the Donald is thinking that way, but if he wants somebody who really knows how to make government work, who really knows the budget cold, who really can deal with these arcane policies, Kasich's the man. He is an extremely able person, and he'd, of course, make a tremendous president. But who knows? He'll win Ohio. He's coming in fairly well. I think they say Cruz can't seemingly get anything much past the evangelicals. He gets very strong support from evangelicals. And that leaves Kasich and Trump. But Trump is, it astounds me. I think it astounds everybody. And it looks like he's got a clear shot at the nomination, the way things are going. Well, in other news, the Iranians fired a test missile, and they had it, and it was they had 2 long-range missiles, and they wrote in Hebrew a deadly message. John K. Jessup has that story.
Thanks, Pat. Those 2 ballistic missiles are capable of hitting Israel, and written on them was the following phrase: "Israel must be wiped out." That message was written in Hebrew. Iran has launched missiles in the past with similar phrases on them, but this test comes after the country recently signed a nuclear deal with the world powers, including the U.S. The United States has objected to the missile tests since the deal. Pat?
You know, I don't think we should ever fault Israel for defending itself. And it's not like those Iranians are hiding their ambitions. They want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. Once they have a nuclear bomb that is tipped on one of the missiles they have developed, they will not hesitate to annihilate Israel. I mean, that is their mindset. And so for us to restrain Israel from taking defensive measures would be insane. And I don't know if Bibi Netanyahu and his associates are contemplating this, but something really in their defense needs to be done immediately, because the Iranians are doing it. But to write on those missiles, "We're going to demolish Israel," and put it in Hebrew, that, I mean, how clear can it get? The major powers missed a great opportunity at the beginning of World War II by not taking Adolf Hitler seriously. He wrote in Mein Kampf, which means my struggle, he wrote what his plans were, and he carried them out to the letter. John?
Pat, the nuclear deal with Iran is one of Israel's top concerns as Vice President Joe Biden arrived there for meetings with Israeli leaders. His visit comes at a time of ongoing Palestinian terrorist attacks on Israelis, and as an American tourist was killed by a Palestinian in a stabbing rampage in the port city of Jaffa near Tel Aviv. As Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, Biden's trip coincides with Israelis' trust in the Obama administration at an all-time low.
Vice President Joe Biden and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with their wives and talked about the solidarity of the U.S.-Israel relationship. While U.S. and Israeli leaders praised the relationship between the two countries, over the course of President Obama's terms in office, Israelis have increasingly lost confidence in his policies toward Israel and the Middle East. That concern has been reflected in polls. For example, after the U.S. and other world powers negotiated the nuclear deal with Iran, nearly 8 out of 10 Israelis felt it put Israel in danger. And a poll of Israelis last year showed only 9% of Israelis felt President Obama was pro-Israel. 60% thought he was pro-Palestinian. And more than 60% of Israelis described Obama as the worst U.S. president for Israel in the past 30 years.
When Israelis view Obama putting his trust at the UN, considering the UN to be the quarterback of international relations, we cannot but develop doubts about the realism coming out of the White House.
Ambassador Yoram Ettinger, the former Israeli liaison to the U.S. Congress, says the lack of U.S. leadership and the so-called leading from behind is what frightens Israel and America's allies in the region.
Ever since Obama has entered the White House, there has been a devastating erosion of America's posture of deterrence, which is bad for America, but doubly so for America's allies throughout the world, but especially in the wildest neighborhood in the world, which is the Middle East. It resembles a new sheriff in town who announces publicly that he carries no gun in his holster. Allies of America, Israel included, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, Abu Dhabi, Dubai, Kuwait, we all want the American sheriff to bring back the gun to the holster and to assert itself.
Despite the concerns about the Obama administration, Ettinger says while Israelis may not like Obama's policies, the relationship between Israel and the U.S. remains strong.
While at the top, we do not have positive chemistry between the two leaders, the strategic cooperation between the two countries, commercially and militarily, are at an all-time high. Sometimes in defiance of the president, but again due to the American public and the American Congress.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. North Korea says it has miniaturized nuclear warheads that can be placed on missiles. A North Korean newspaper showed reported photos of the warheads, and the paper also said leader Kim Jong-un met with his nuclear scientists for a briefing on their progress. If true, that would give the North the capability of launching nuclear attacks against other countries. The regime claims it can strike the United States, although that is questioned by some experts. Pyongyang also says it tested its first hydrogen bomb in early January. Well, here at home, the government projects U.S. crude oil production will drop to its lowest level since 2013 in the next year. That's because shale oil drillers are shutting down some of their rigs to conserve cash. Bloomberg News reports that the decline in production isn't expected to be enough to push oil prices higher, which have climbed slightly in the last few weeks, back up above $30 a barrel. So gas should stay under $2 a barrel. And Pat, this slowdown in U.S. oil production fits right in line with what you've been saying.
Well, exactly. Without question, the Saudis had a policy, and the policy, they were concerned about the fact that U.S. production was ramping up to the highest in years. And the U.S. was becoming the leader in the production of oil, crude oil. So they said, we will shut these guys out of business. And they deliberately have held down the price of oil beyond anything they can stand. And they have been willing to bankrupt Nicaragua and countries like that. But they have certainly been willing to bankrupt the shale oil drillers in Texas and Oklahoma. And the hundreds and hundreds of companies that are either shutting down production, laying down their drilling rigs, or going bankrupt is startling. So the Saudis are winning that race, but how long they're going to keep this floor on oil, we don't know. But oil has come back up. It dipped down below $30. It's up to about $36, $7 for West Texas Intermediate. And so there is some good news for the oil producers. And people say, well, I get cheaper gas in my car. Well, big deal. But if you look at all the jobs that are associated with the petroleum industry in America, it is an enormous impact on our gross domestic product. And if we cut that back, it'll hurt us all, even though we might get a cheaper tank of gas at the pump. Wendy?
I never thought about it like that.
Yeah. Well, there's some of us that have to think globally.
I'm glad you're doing that for us.